my life situation. All right. So when I got here to where I'm at right now, I don't like giving my location out, but when I got where I'm at, with I came out here for a funeral and I decided to stay out here, right? So about I don't know 3 days to a week into being here, I went and I applied for a job at a temp agency to get hired on at a shipping facility, one of the biggest shipping facilities in America, right? Starting pay is $16 an hour. Me and my fiance, we were supposed to get a job together. We were supposed to start like 2 weeks ago. Well, come to find out, which I already knew this, but I didn't think it would affect getting a job because where I just came from, it didn't affect getting a job. But I had a warrant, a bench warrant, due to failure to appear for a traffic violation from back in 2016. All right. Now get this. So this is what went down originally before I give you the court update. So I was dating a woman at the time named Samantha. Me, Samantha, and this girl named Casey. Me and Samantha, we just got off work. We picked up Casey and we went to my house. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey. It was unopened, threw it in the back of my truck. Then we was gonna go to Samantha's house so she could change. And then we was gonna go to the lake and have a little fun, you know? Well, I didn't even make it off my street. I lived on a little road, has a couple hills and wines on it. So I go over a hill and there's a roadblock, right? Now, when I get to this roadblock, I'm like at least 10 cars back in the roadblock and I'm waiting. I thought about turning around. Something told me just to turn around. I didn't turn around. So back then, the state that I was in, or the state that I'm in now, it was an open carry state where you could legally open carry, but you cannot legally concealed carry, right? Now, I get to the roadblock. This state trooper, he's being very rude to say the least. Basically, almost everybody that's came through here so far has been arrested, you know? And I'm like, what's going on? Well, he asked me to step out of the car. And I'm like, you want me to step out of the car? He's like, did you hear me, boy? Yada, yada, yada. So I step out of the car. When I stepped out of the car, I just bought this truck, not even a week before this instance. And I wasn't used to the steering wheel being so low that when I tried to step out, there was no room for my leg, right? And I had the gun under my leg. And when I tried to step out, the gun fell out of the truck. And he got super scared, you know. He thought maybe I was trying to shoot him or something. Sorry, I got chips in my teeth. But he freaked out and he decided to take me in. He said that he was giving me a DUI. He illegally searched my vehicle. I didn't give him permission to search my vehicle, right? And he found weed in my girlfriend's purse. Not my weed, her purse. He didn't find anything illegal in my truck. The gun was registered in my name. Anyways, takes me to jail. I get out the next morning. And originally I had a gun charge, a DUI. While I was in jail, they gave me this little card. And the card said that if I didn't give them my blood for a blood sample, that I would be held in jail until I gave them the blood sample, which is illegal. That's against the law, right? But since they're crooked, I was like, I'm just gonna give them the blood sample. I knew better, but I did it anyways. I just wanted to get out of jail, right? You could say that I was a coward or whatever, but I just didn't want to sit in jail. I've been to jail plenty of times in my past. I hate it. I just wanted to leave. Well, everybody that got arrested with me, there was like, I don't know, at least 8 people. Only one guy failed a breathalyzer for 0.01% over the limit. Everybody else was well under the limit, still somehow they got a DUI. The common denominator here was that everyone who got arrested had a gun on them, okay? They were all legal guns as far as I knew, but everyone who had a gun at this traffic stop got arrested for a DUI. Now my gun charge now, when I check my charges, the gun charge has been replaced with the speeding ticket. And when I called and asked about my gun, now years ago, they stole my gun, all right? The gun charge disappeared years ago. But now that I'm here and I'm about to be fighting this situation, now I'm gonna bring this up in court, okay? If it makes it that far. They stole my gun. The gun charge disappeared. The state trooper, he stole my gun. That's crazy. That's very corrupt. That's crooked. You know, that's theft. He's a thief. He stole my gun. He gave me false charges of a DUI. I did not smoke anything at all. I did not take, I just got off work, right? It's crazy. I took a breathalyzer and it was zeros. You know, I didn't even have a 0.01% of anything, right? But when I was in jail and they did my DNA test, they're like, oh, there's pot in your system, right? Oh, so whatever. So they're trying to say that since I failed a DNA test for pot being in my system, that I was high at the moment, which I wasn't. I would be real with y'all. Why would I lie? You know? And so here's the thing. I looked up the laws. I just looked it up. Where I'm at, the state that I'm in, right? You have to prove that someone is impaired, okay? Or under the influence of whatever it may be. You can prove that someone has alcohol in their system with the blood test or a breathalyzer, okay? You cannot prove that someone is high or too high to drive or anything like that with the blood test. It's not possible, okay? So, I went, and I got my warrant taken care of. They recalled the warrant and they set me a court date for October. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna tell them that I want a pretrial diversion, which means that if I stay out of trouble for X amount of time, the charge just disappears and I don't even have to go to trial. I'm gonna tell them why. I'm gonna talk to this, I got a public defender, right? And I'm gonna tell them about how they stole my gun, how the DUI charge is frivolous, it's mute, it's null and void, it's fraudulent, you know, because I was not under the influence of anything, and that they cannot prove that I was under the influence of anything at all because I wasn't, right? And I'm gonna tell them that if they don't give me the pretrial diversion, I'm gonna take this to, I'm gonna demand a trial by jury of my peers. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to challenge jurisdiction, right? I'm not gonna say that I understand the charges. I'm gonna say no, I don't understand the charges. I understand what you're trying to do here. I overstand the charges, yada yada. You know, I know how the game goes. Last time I fought charges, it was like, I believe it was 5 charges altogether. 3 of them were felonies. And it was on the East Coast when I fought these charges, right? They were trying to railroad me. They wouldn't let me fire my public defender, so I hired a lawyer who owned his own law firm, who's a brother of mine, not blood related, but he's a brother of mine. And even he was seeming kind of iffy, like he was trying to get me to plead guilty to some charges, right, on what's called a recommended plea deal. Now, a recommended plea deal is a recommendation. So basically, what you do is you plead guilty to X amount of charges, and then they recommend to the prosecutor and the judge that the felonies get dropped, or that you only do 3 years instead of X amount of years, or that you get probation, right? Well, the problem with that is that the prosecuting attorney and or the judge does not have to accept that recommendation. It's only a recommendation. There is no contract involved. So what I did was I kept demanding a negotiated plea deal. A negotiated plea deal is a contract with wet ink signatures involved, right? Now, they kept acting like they were going to give me a negotiated plea deal, but on the day of my court date, there was still no negotiation made. There was no contract. So what I did was, there was a Catholic church right down the street. I sought refuge at the church, and I called them up, right? And I told them that I was not going in that courtroom until I had a contract. I said, until I have a negotiated plea deal typed up, ready to be signed, I'm not going in the church, okay? And they tried to play with me, they tried to scare me. I told them that if they didn't make that contract, that I was calling the news and going to social media and etc., and that I was going to make this public, that I was seeking refuge at a church. And they didn't want that, because they couldn't legally come get me while I was seeking refuge. And then this thing would have went public, and a lot of people would have learned a lot of things that they don't want people knowing, Like, first of all, that you can seek refuge in the church. Altogether, my charges, if they gave me the maximum for all the charges, it would have been 26 years. All right? Now, Abraxas, I know a lot about what you're saying. I know that these are not judges. They're acting as executive administrators of the trust. Okay? You're assuming that I don't know what I'm doing. You're assuming that I don't know what I'm talking about. I know about the Capitis Maximus Straminius Homo. I know about the trust. I know about the fact that they're not judges, they're executive administrators. I know how they assume me to be surety. They assume me to be surety, right? Of the Capitis Maximus Straminius Homo, the Sedicae Vi Trust. I know all about that. All right? I know about the game. But what I also know is that just because something is supposed to be done a certain way, they make the rules. It's their court, their game. It's not my game. It's their game, their court. They run the court. Okay? I get it. But what you have to understand is the fact that if you go in there by yourself, or even if you have a couple of people with you as witnesses, right? Even if you have everything on camera, at the end of the day, you have to play your cards right. You have to play your cards right. Because the knowledge that you may have, the knowledge that I have, not all this stuff works. How many times have you seen people get railroaded even though they knew what they was doing? How many people? Not everybody always wins. Think about Judge Joe Brown. Judge Joe Brown, watch his court case. He knew what he was talking about. He knew what he was talking about. He was talking about how they didn't have jurisdiction and et cetera and et cetera. And they still locked him up. They locked him up for contempt of court. And then they held him for, I think, like weeks after that. Everything they did to Judge Joe Brown was illegal. You feel me? And he had more authority than the man acting as a judge in the courtroom that he was in. Watch that. Just because you know some things doesn't mean that it's always going to help you. What matters is the contract. Okay? Contracts is everything in this game. I'm reading what you're writing. I'm reading it. they're not gonna give you an ID. You can't make them provide you with anything. You can demand it, you can ask for it, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna give it to you. They're not. They don't even really let you record in the courtrooms most of the time. And you're supposed to be able to record. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna try to let this slide, even though they stole my gun and the gun charge disappeared and they replaced it with a speeding ticket, and there's no possible way that I could have been speeding. The DUI charge is fraudulent. I wasn't under the influence of anything. Even though all these charges are fraudulent and they stole my property, I'm going to try to let it slide if they will give me a pretrial diversion. It's like a quid pro quo, all right? But if they won't give me the quid pro quo that I'm asking for, if they won't meet my stipulations, then I'm gonna fight this. And I do know how to do it. I don't wanna do it. It's gonna take a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of stress. But if they're not gonna let this slide, if they're gonna try to make me pay money after they stole my property, if they're gonna try to make me, if they're gonna try to put charges, right, on the criminal record of the Stramenius homo, this is soon to be me, and they're gonna try to ruin my life, then I'm not gonna just stand there and allow it to happen. You feel me? I can't do it. I'm not gonna let nobody push me around. This happened back in 2016, so I just wanna get on with my life. Everything that you're saying sounds good, and you're right. You feel me? But have you ever fought? Have you ever successfully won court cases before? And can you prove it if you say yes? I have fought in court and won. I've never really lost in court. One of the simplest things that I've beaten in court, possession of firearms, because we have the constitutional right to bear arms, okay? And I always refuse to get a concealed carry license. I constitutionally carry whether the state that I'm assumed to be in, whether I'm walking on land title to state of whatever, whether they recognize constitutional carry or not, I still constitutionally carry. All right? And I've beaten gun charges, possession of pot charges. I don't smoke anymore, but I used to. And I've beaten possession charges and all that stuff in the most simplest ways. When they ask me, and this is before I did any search and research, I just was led by the Spirit. When they ask me what my name is, right, I would say Zachary of Jessica, right? Zachary of Jessica, because that's how it's written in the Bible, They would be like, "Are you Zachary Pinkerton?" I'd be like, "I'm Zachary of Jessica." Okay? When they would ask me if I understand the charges, I would just simply say no. And they would try to play the whole game where they try to get you evaluated to see if you're mentally stable and all that stuff, right? And they would always come back that I'm mentally stable. And I would just keep doing continuance, and every time I would play the same game. Do you understand these charges? No, I do not. How do you plead? I refuse to plead. Right? And it's always worked, just that simple. Just doing that right there has always worked for me. Now, when it came to the felony charges, I had to pull out some more tricks out my. So basically, you're saying that when you go in the courtroom, that you demand that they show you identification and that they give you identification. That's what you're saying right now, right? Abraxas, you're telling me that when you go into the courtroom that you demand that they show you ID. Do you what you ask them for 3 forms of identification and they give it to you? Nobody even carries 3 forms of identification. They might have a driver's license on them. And then you're telling me that they actually give you their driver's license, everyone in the courtroom. All the code enforcement officers, the executive administrator acting as judge, the prosecuting attorney, the attorney, all them. Okay, so then what? So after they give you identification, then what? What do you do next? What do you do after they give you the driver's license? Where'd the comments go? Can you hear me? It can't be that slow. So what do you mean it doesn't matter? You've been saying this whole time to ID them. Like that's the silver bullet. I'm humoring you. I'm asking you questions. You've been saying this whole time that you have to identify them. After they give you the ID, then what? What do you do from there? They're probably I don't see them giving it to you. I don't see them giving me any ID. You're telling me to ask just the judge or the judge and all the code enforcement officers on the side, the prosecuting attorney, ask them for ID. I'm about to run out of battery, so I kind of need you to negotiate your terms and conditions to act as your all caps name. It's not mine. Estoppel. So what, you demand estoppel? So you're saying to ask for their identification and then demand estoppel. I don't claim the Capitis Maximus Straminius Homo. My phone's about to die though. I believe the Capitis Maximus Straminius Homo to be the mark of the beast, the name and number of man. So you're saying if they conceal the identifications and they refuse to give it, then you demand it. You demand an estoppel. Okay. All right. Well, before I go, brothers and sisters, I just want to let y'all know that I'm starting work tomorrow. Starting work tomorrow. Me and my woman, we just got jobs, finally. Got the warrant taken care of, got the background check, came in clean. The warrant's gone, and we're starting work tomorrow, so things about to start looking up. Y'all know that I lost my farm, my chicken farm, my banana plantation, and all my beehives, and I had to move to a new state and yada yada. And here I am. One love, peace, and fortitude, brothers and sisters. I'll see y'all later.